Welcome! Glad to be with you. It's the Crypto Sniper. So, what's happening in the crypto world? Some of you are a little bit forlorn. There's been pullbacks, you say. There's been pain, you say. There's been downside. We don't like downside. Oh, boo. Because we're net longs only. We only know how to go long and we only know how to use leverage. And every time we use it, we get blown up because we didn't do it right. That's right. That's the plight of a retail crypto trader summarized in one. Very, very immature at times, it has to be said. Anyway, let's have a look. What are we here to tell you? Why did the market go down? Is there a reason? There's always reasons. Joy, fun, seasons in the sun. Oh, all the OG wallets seems to be emptying out. I wonder what that means. All the OG wallets from 2010, 2011, they are they're heading for the XRP. Never mind, not NSA tokens held by you-know-who insiders from the gods, the insiders, the real insiders that were all in on this game from the very get-go and the beginning. It's not NSA and CIA created Bitcoin. It can't be, but they're all unloading right now. They're unloading. But it's going to the moon. It's going to 1 million. Max Kaiser told me. But anyway, it could and should still get to 150, we say. So we will trade it and never trust it. But why are we here and what are we here to talk about? Well, this is a little HVF method structure that made a second interim. And at this point, you are making near all-time highs in fact, it would have been all-time highs at around 3.85, 3.9 trillion. The total market cap. In an earlier tweet, we said to you, clap like a seal. We said, yes, that the market will go through 5.25 trillion. And that's the reason why. That's the reason why we're going to light up the sky. We're going to taste America. My Winstons and I. That was an advert they used to churn out so long and so many times when I was young. American cigarette marketing pulverized itself into my brain as a young child sitting on the tip of Africa. We weren't safe from it all. Anyway, pullback now, a little bit of hammering. So I want to tell you good news. It's actually a good news video, even though it sounds like I'm full of cheeky jibes. It's a good news video because you broke really clearly. You had another squeezy to get the gumption out of this to go. And then you broke nicely and then you walked up. You had a little bit of tweezer action. We call that kettle drumsticks, where you get immediately a shooting star on a kettle drumsticks. It's not a shooting star. But it's not in the right position. And the other one is kind of a hammer. But it is a range-defining test. We call it range-defining kettle drumsticks. They're like two kettle drumsticks opposing each other. And that was actually showing you low vol grind upwards. A low vol grind upwards that took you to the 3.85. And that's a good thing that it was low vol, because if it was in melt up phase, if it was more like the bit here, you could run a risk of a harder pullback. But because it's not in melt up phase, at this point it was grinding higher. It kind of grinded out, tired, and then came a little bit down. So it's actually a low volatility creep into the high with quite a low vol pullback. That tells me, yes, we can still come back a little more, but it's not yet in capitulate mode, which could be a problem if you had a real hard sell-off. Ask the gold guys, they've had a bit of a hard sell-off. Even I'm surprised by the rate of decline on that. And it's unlikely. That would be a sudden change in the volatility. What we're actually seeing here is we're seeing a bit of buying. You've got buying wicks here. It is trading down, but there is a little bit of bid coming in. You see, each time the trading bid, it keeps wanting to close at a new low, but somebody's nibbling. So in the end, we expect higher. We expect 5.27. Can I assure you that we can't go a lot lower? No, I can't. Technically, this pattern remains valid until you go there. Even there, it's still valid. It's only invalidated when you break that red line down at 3.19 trillion. But the good news is it actually was, as I've already stated, a low volatility tap out and a low volatility pullback so far. When does it become bad news and how do we change that view? There's always a place and a reason how we change a view. Remember, we are talking about the future. We haven't been there yet. We're guessing. We're talking about scenario casts. Everything is a probability or a possibility. There's no certainties. But it is the best way to tap out and the best way to pull back. And so far it's compliant with that. So that suggests to me it may not be the deepest. I would say you shouldn't go much deeper at the worst here. That would be my 25% thing that you break below that. That was where you were kind of impulsive. You could come that far, but you could actually stop before then. So if I was doing my sort of 45-50% biggest possibility, I would say we're going to bottom somewhere here. And we've already had a hammer quite deep into that. I don't think necessarily you have to go too much lower. But of course, it does depend on the big B. The big B being Bitcoin, which is the largest of the market caps in the mix. And for that reason, we switch right over to Bitcoin, which tells us a little bit about Galaxy Digital appears to offload. Fancy that. The Winklevoss twins that argued about starting Facebook, you know, the CIA program that was designed to be your track and trace life book, where you gave them all your biometric photos and all your dates of birth and everything you like so that they could scrape data and market to you and do much worse things, of course, especially if you wear a pager and you live in the Levant region. But let's not get into there. Galaxy Digital, those guys, them, seem to be the chosen place for offloading the original gangster whale stuff. Isn't that interesting? Stains of statism on them from Facebook era, where they were paid out a lolly old lump sum, now fronting, you know, the two blondie guys that did rowing for the university, you know, obvious brains, frontmen for the you-know-who's, I would say. But anyway, that's getting a little bit too conspiratorial. We don't want to show you how the world works entirely, not all in one YouTube. Galaxy Digital seems to be their proven platform for billions of original gangsters, on-chain analysts, offloads for Bitcoin. Isn't that interesting? So statists using statist platforms to do statist things. That's right. So wouldn't you just supplies, not for me. Anyway, so Bitcoin, what's it doing? Well, for a long time, it was actually holding the level, and we had hopes that would turn into an upside break. But this was a very brutal sell-off. That was a very brutal sell-off after a nice little fractal upside that we were lucky enough to benefit from. And it actually overperformed. And here's a key point for you to remember. Overperformance upside begets future overperformance downside. That's the thing. There's this beautiful symmetry to the world. That gave way too much beyond the target and then slapped down, bounced on our target, slapped down, wanted to support on our funnel and then went into a new low. That was a real slap in the face that. You went too far, you got too bullish, it feels like a slap in the face. And in actual fact, right now, if I'm looking at it, we do technically have the possibility that there is an inverted structure here. An inverted structure, which could mean we go a little lower. Bear in mind what I've just said about total. Bitcoin held up, though, for a lot longer. We'll be looking at the Bitcoin dominance, then some of the alts that rolled over and died a fair bit sooner. So if we do a draw there, you can see that now we have an inverted, so slap in the face, boom, like that. In fact, I must remember to share that particular diagram with the lovely community through leaders, because I'm not sure I've done the draw for them on the inverted. IHBF for BTC, scenario. Yep, so we will share that while we're doing and recording that video. Of course, you could be in the community getting it first instead of later on YouTube, which we only do some of it. In fact, I've got a mystery coin that I'm going to tease you about that's going to do more than most other tokens in the short, near, medium term. That is actually a buy, but we've got to worry about further downside. So what happened here with Bitcoin? Well, it broke to the downside. See the green line? That's the inverted funnel. It ran its first interim there with a little bit of over, and now it's having a bit of a bounce. But there is a possibility that you have a downside with a target of 113. Let's get that one in the right place. I need to move one of these. Let's move it to bottom left because you can't see the other one. There we go. So stop, target 1113.014. So that smells like you could even be 1112. It's not a crisis. You're well above 100K. You'll still be in the low teens, but it is the first in a new setup, and that can be of concern. So that is the squeezy that has shown it's going to be downside. The OGs are going to crash Bitcoin. Are they going to do that? Could it be? You said, but Francis, you said it would be good news. Well, I think this has a chance of making target. Just because I've drawn it doesn't mean it will. Remember, we're still overtly in a bull market. Not every inverted pattern performs, but that's a possibility. And that would see that total chart again, as I say, grind a little bit lower on account of the Bitcoin. Let's clean our face a little bit. That could again grind a little bit lower, but it doesn't have the looks of being a capitulation. So you could end up, as I say, somewhere in the box here, and Bitcoin could be down at 112 nines, for example. But I'm not sure you're going to get too much more from that, unless this turns high momentum later. So don't forget, this was high momentum and then slowed. This could, normally it starts fast and then slows. This could start slow and then go fast. That would point to overperformance on the Bitcoin, inverted overperformance potentially. But I'm just seeing it's bounced quite well. It's got a little pushback. This capitulation part was kind of brisk. You have made that first interim, so you get a rally. It doesn't have extremity yet. It's got a reasonable bounce. So I don't think this is going to be a crisis pullback. The target run will take you into the 12s. I'm not sure you get too much more, unless something far bigger in the world is happening, which is a major risk-off event. So that's, I think that comes end of quarter 3, beginning quarter 4. More likely risk, and I think that could be after we've done 125, 150,000 on Bitcoin. So my timings are, we're going to still get to do the 150 on balance of probabilities. You'll just be in a little bit of a pullback spell now. Okay, by the way, ETH has looked pretty decent recently. Remember, we highlighted how they needed to really pull finger out of bum. And in actual fact, I would say there might even be a little bit of a parting of ways in terms of overall performance. You could have ETH, BTC do a bit of bullishness. So this is a broadening structure. It's typically continuation. You also got the rising wedge eventually that brought about the breakdown out of this upward move. You had a nice HVF there. We'll draw it for you with the tool as well. By the way, you get that tool once you've done all your tests in our content and have shown a good understanding, and you are of course a community member. So that was the upside tool there. We're getting gold alerts, so I imagine gold is slipping a little bit at the moment. So let's just clear that again. So you can see that upside, it tried to hold, tried to support, but actually only just technically ran the support that the funnel provides on the volatility squeeze. So there we go, there we go. This could, in fact, whilst we're talking slightly concerned, but I'm not overly concerned for that Bitcoin. I do think it recovers. We've actually got the situation that Ethereum is breaking out of a broadening structure, which is a large continuation structure on that bull pole, and for which that capping descending grind line should indeed set up a move to the upside. Okay, so Ethereum bullish. Ethereum quite bullish. Slowly so. I mean, but I don't think Bitcoin is excessively bearish. This could fail. You could rally. And where's the fail point? Run this. So you see these alerts here. That means you've failed. So we're not terrified by this structure, albeit a first in a new trend, because this has had a lot of volume stacking on it for quite some time. The market seemed to have reached some degree of comfort with this, but the slap in the face was brutal. It took out that support, and that suggests possibility of trend change. And this big wind up has wound up to get you below that seam of support that the legacy funnel provided. So you had that big, lengthy, you never really broke below it for very long. You only tested it. You kept rallying back above it. So a rally back above, rally back above, rally back above the funnel box, rally back above. So you wound up and smashed it to get below it. But you seem to be fairly buoyant underneath it. You could come all the way back into that funnel zone. So I'm not sure about how terrified I am by this, but just so that you know, there is a possibility of a 112.9s run, but I'm not expecting it to go too much further. And this can invalidate, and this level here, which is 119 basically and a half, okay, will invalidate that. So we'll see. So that's Bitcoin. Ethereum better, as we've already covered. The total doesn't point to, unless it turned violent, which would mean if this spilt brutally, which, as I say, with decent rallies against the break, it's probably just going to, how does it reconcile itself? It'll probably turn out to be something like that. Either a falling wedge, for example. So let's rub that one out. And we get a bit of a squeeze along the bottom there, and you go up. You come back down. Maybe you'll double bottom, and then eventually you break out of the top, because you typically have 3 clear impulses. This is the tabletop one, which is the broad extending second, and then you get the third one, something like that. You might just bounce on the splitter. Sometimes they don't come the whole way down, and then you break out. So that could be how this ends up revolving. Falling wedges often form out of inverteds that aren't particularly aggressive and turn into a bit benign. So you've let out a little bit of the hot money and the retail, and then you carry on up. And that up is to 150,000, which we've shown you before in previous videos. So go and check those on the big time frame as to why 150 is the target. Okay, so ETH good, BTC probably a little bit soft, with an outside chance of going down. XRP, people always ask about XRP. So XRP did quite badly, actually, relatively, out of this grind line. It was also it was doing something like this as well. We were wondering, will you be up, will you be down? Basing ascending grind line got smashed after it bled very steadily to that level, and then it just spilt for running those technical stops. A lot of technical stops would have been triggered there, and there. So that's just a puke. So we started to watch for it, and we said, okay, could that be a left shoulder? At first we asked, could that be a right shoulder and a complex head? That's already been invalidated. So it's looking more like, again, as in Bitcoin, a potential grinding up W bottom that could trigger and reverse pull back, and then go and then make it back up and make an RH2, a secondary high somewhere here, where this is the first high. So yeah, that's a couple of thoughts on XRP. This one, a lot of people were giving us quite a bit of grief about Binance, mainly because of this structure. We warned it was a non-standard structure and could be an interesting journey, but that we had it for an upside break once it showed it. We were originally modeling Binance for a downside break. It did break up, but then languished as we had pullbacks here. But what many haven't noticed, the time stop is there. And it's since been working its way up. It made its second interim and has actually been quite high. Final target is there. It hasn't got too much time to mess about. But if you close this trade, let's say it stayed where it is for the remainder of time, you would still have probably 75% of the upside target. So all those that were giving us grief, you know, look at your Binance trade, look how shit it's gone. Well, it's actually performed pretty well, actually. But this bit, I didn't stick with it because we had a lot of other things going on. But you should, by HVF method, allow the full time frame to play out. You close on a time stop. The minute it runs the time stop, that means that becomes this day, which is almost the 1st of August, I think. It's the last few days of July. We're not there yet. We're on 25. Let's get the actual day, shall we? Instead of guessing. 31st, there you go, last day of July. So you still have 6 or 7 days, is it 6 days, including today, to get to the target there of 868. I don't think that's going to happen, but I think you're going to get 75% of the take profit. It had too long a walk in the mulberry bushes over here and came and supported, bang, right on the axis. Funny that. We've also got a legacy target that we'd also talked about potentially bullishly that also fizzled. Now this one would have, because we did talk a bit about Binance. There was a spell where we were talking quite a bit about it. This one would have been broken. So that was a failed pattern. Why? We called these left shoulder. So this is a failed pattern, and that has to be absolutely acknowledged. This is a right shoulder. Actually, it's not broken. It didn't. It just took too long. So the right shoulder is there. It never actually got invalidated. So the pattern hasn't been invalidated, and it has a 900. So what you have is a train that's running a little bit late, but probably going to make both of these targets in due course. Which was quite a bold thing to say. Don't forget, we were at the 500s, the mid and low 500s. So it's close to an 85, 90% move. But it petered out, and there was an interesting old journey. This, I mean, we all know that this crypto cycle has been spotty as all hell. It's not been pumpermental, steady, week in, week out, like others. It's had fits and starts. It's surged and spluttered, surge and splutter, surge and whiplash, whiplash. Run in, no, it's back down again. No. So it's been a difficult market to call, and I don't think we've been particularly exceptional on that. We go with patterns and patterns reliability, but that never invalidated because it didn't take out the right shoulder. But no ways I would have sat since October last year. When did it officially trigger? We were talking about it a lot here. That's where it officially triggered and went. So November last year. That's a long time to have gone sideways. And actually you would have been underwater for all of that period. If you'd got in at the neckline, you would have actually been in the red, and you would have had to have stuck to a stop down here. And you would have seen 2/3 of that, 3/4 of that stop nearly run over there. So a difficult trade. I would not have, for all the tea in China, have sat that one through. So I don't claim to at all. But it's interesting when you go back and you see legacy patterns. And we've got a confluence of targets. You've got 870 and 900 now. And you've got this rather cranky inverted that had quite a flat bottom to it across the lows here. But it triggered and it showed us it was going to be upside. At this one point, as I said already, we were wondering about downside. We were watching it. Very low vol here, little flush out to the downside. Watch for that. Often just before, especially if you're not directionally convinced, you're looking at a setup that's not directionally, often flush out the one way to go the other way. It's a big trick of the markets. Any leverage hands that were long, that were too big, that were too convinced, got shaken out. You did come back, as I say, to the axis, and since then you've got that high. You're currently that high. That's a lot of the profit, given the stop. That's the stop. If you'd got in on a just-in-time basis, when we were trying it, we'd actually got in a bit earlier than a just-in-time, but we weren't holding it for all that malarkey. So no profits made by me, but interesting to see how it's turned out. And I feel that these patterns that have gestated and got long in the tooth, it's very much emblematic of how the crypto bull market has been. It's not been the tightest, easiest one, which is why you don't trade leverage unless you have a really clear setup and clear stops. Why you need to be patient, why most of the money is going to be made in the right coins held investment and very selective retail trades on these time frames. And as I said, I never trusted this particular structure too much. So it's an interesting story, Binance, because it kind of, for me, encapsulates the whole game. But I see it getting there. I just see it arriving late for the HVF setup because of that big gestation, and I see that target being made without ever being stopped. So you can't actually say, so head and shoulders we don't officially have time frames for. That's the value of an HVF. You close on the time stop. You don't officially have time frames for, so it never ran that low. So, you know, it stays open until infinity. Either the target gets made or the stop gets run. You know, one of these two lines have to happen. And I think in the end, it's going to make the 900 rather than get stopped out. But again, if we were to have a chronic, scary, demand-destroying event, you could go down before that. So one of these two levels will be made in the end. But I put my money on the 900. Okay, so that's Binance. Now, I'm going to give you something good that looks great, and it's HBAR, and we discussed it a little bit before. We didn't do so much of the charting, but I'll give you that. And then I'm going to tell you there's one that's going to do even more, but only our community have it. We will be jumping in it, and we'll be jumping, and we think it's going to do a 3x while these other things are making it to 900. And it is liquid enough. It's not one I've spoken of often, and it is going to surge, and I think it's going to climb the table in terms of market cap. Okay, so what have we got here? We've got HBAR. This is an interesting one. So if you want to find out what that one is, you can book a call with us. Before and become part of the community, because that one's staying with us. This was a big W. It's just draw it very simply. A big W bottom, and that was a real flaw there. It let go, it really let go there once it was going. You knew it was going to run that stop then. It diddled all the way back down. Many people would have been calling falling wedge, expecting an upside break. We're the ones that have warned. Rising wedges can sometimes, in the right circumstances, moon, and falling wedges can spill. And you have to know the context for that. Marginally higher high, failing to make a new low, leaning on the floor, volume by price, lots of tools. Anyway, that's a W bottom with a neckline at the 18 cents. Now, that generates the 91.5 target that sounded ridiculous when you were sitting at 4.5 cents, 0.045, yeah, and an 18 cents, but less ridiculous now that you're at 25 cents. And here I'm going to show you what's going on in here, because this is interesting and exciting. It's exciting for HBAR fans. We've got good news. Despite Bitcoin being a little bit off color, we've got good news on Ethereum, and we've got reasonably good news on HBAR that is a building. So here's what we drew, and we drew this. So we're waiting up top here. I said, don't chase in here. You've just made another. So the light blue is always necklines. That's the legacy one that generated that big target of 91. So we'll just make it small again and make it solid. There we go. So you see the big boy. Now this big boy is higher up, and this is another inverted head and shoulder call. It's kind of interesting because we actually have a W. So there's two. You'll see there's a light blue there as well. We've got that, which is just a standard W bottom. And we've generated that target of 41 cents there from that. But interestingly, we've got quite a bit more. And that's where I take that line out and I say, but we've shouldered higher up. And that's at 28 3/4. You had your shoulder there. Lots of bouncing, by the way. You see on the legacy big neckline, that's the one that gave the 91 cents that I showed you on the bigger time frames, the weekly. You can see the bouncing there, and again the bouncing there, and again the bouncing there. So there is shoulder 1, and that becomes armpit 1, and this becomes a W head, but the W head is not going all the way to the same neckline. So it's a half W. And we said, I wonder if we will shoulder, because it was quite bullish at that point. XRP was running, everybody was running. I wonder if it'll pull back now that it's met the 28 3/4 and give us the right shoulder. And I drew this shoulder without there being any shoulder. And since then, this has happened. You first got a small little revisit there, and then a deeper dip here. So that is your left shoulder, Greek S. This is your W head. And are we forming a right shoulder? And interestingly, will this other blue line, remember the W I drew here for you, because that top there, be part of the support this time? And will it be a good buy limit space and then you come back up? Only to trigger, probably to pull back, run that, probably rest, run that, probably rest. And the 91 on the weekly, that is off the chart, but that if I bring into the chart, you will lose some of the detail here, but you will see that that's the 91. So that is the speculations for an inverted head and shoulder. We like to have a slightly smaller right shoulder than the big left shoulder, and I think we're probably on target to get that. How much will this serve as support? We can run it, by the way, we can. Typically you should, and get into some of the candle wick body strength here, bottom out. So I would say from 22 cents and a little bit up, it becomes an interesting buy for a 91 cents run, 91.5 cents run. That's a much bigger pattern that's taken some time, and you have clearly paused. I mean, the last high is back here in January, and we're July, so that's a 7 month going sideways and nowhere. And again, this is part and parcel of a different kind of cycle for crypto, a different kind of cycle for crypto, but it may lengthen because it's not had all your Christmases in 2 or 3 weeks just non-stop up. So it may lengthen. That might mean we get a longer cycle, but it's more of this patchiness. But in the end, you end up reasonably high. We were the first to talk about bent bananas, but then everyone else wanted to bend their bananas as well. So we stopped doing it because it became boring when everyone else is camping on your campsite. But Bitcoin overall on the macro, the monthly, is this in a log scale chart. So the ability to move a trillion or market cap as easy as it was when it was 100 million is obviously greatly reduced. The amount of new capital required is much, much more. It gets ever more exponential, which is why you are in a debt-based collapse, because trillions have been raised and there's no market that can absorb that anymore. And that is why you will have an economic collapse, and the digital theater is where they want you all in. So watching for a rounding out on HBAR, not yet the trade, but you could, if you've got a hammer somewhere around 22s and it dipped maybe into the 21 or maybe a touch below, you could start picking up or catching knives if you know how to do that with short time frame. Very dangerous if you don't, not with leverage, keep it small. And then you could, or you can just more safely wait for the entry at the 28 3/4, and you'll know your stop by how deep it went for when it returned. In other words, just in time. That is not advice, by the way. That's me talking aloud about what I intend to do. So if every time I say you could, I mean I could do exactly that. What you do will be down to you, and on your head be the results as well. This is just entertainment channel talking about trading and crypto and how I personally intend to play it, even when I am talking in the third person. Okay, so that is Hedera Hashgraph. We did XRP for you, a little bit heavy, the recovery a bit slower on XRP, it has to be said. That second sell a little bit slow, but I think it'll work its way back up there, depending on our friend Bitcoin on how much more it wants to go down. If this goes down and runs the 112, I'm expecting XRP to fall back down and meet that low again, and maybe even make a marginally lower low. But you could then get a spiky W and then a slower reach one. That will be at or approximately the same, and it might end up larger as a general one, where this one had a bit more volatility in it. This one will be a bit more rounded. We often get that, the sharp glute on the left and the rounded buttock on the right. Yeah, so that can be what may happen. We'll see. That does strike me as a little bit of a flag. So there is some danger there if you're assuming all is perfect, but it will also depend a little bit on BTC. We didn't do a lot on cross BTC. So because I'm saying HBAR has become interesting, I might just do HBAR for you. Let's just see it on a bigger time frame. It's been, yeah, from its listing, it's had obviously super hype, and then it bleeds out, pumps, bleeds out, pumps. Big, long drain out. That last bear market. Wow. I'm sitting still waiting for FTX payouts on 2 accounts. The Bahamas, FTX, there's no sign of these guys ever giving the money back. Ever giving. They're sitting and they're reinflating, the crypto market's reinflating. They're keeping the money. And then they're going to say they're going to have, oh, they've got so much surplus. We paid you fiat at the lows of November and we've got all the surplus and interest, and now we're going to feast and pay all the accountants and all the guys. It's such a scam. Why haven't they paid everyone back? If they have the assets, why haven't you paid? 2022, we are sitting in 2025. It's an absolute scam. There's my little FTX rant. So not seeing too much technically. So spike, fade, dump. So yeah, I think HBAR will start to, generally this shows the Bitcoin dominance, by the way. I did say we would look at the Bitcoin dominance side, and I haven't done that. So the spikes have been too infrequent and the dumps have taken you to the low end of the range. Let's have a look at this, because we are calling for the third time that this is indeed the old market and the Bitcoin dominance is now going to fall. Remember, we always do it inverted. We particularly like that, and we think you're going to go through the 48, head probably the 44s. This is a stall box of alt valuation to Bitcoin up top there. I think you start getting into, when you start getting to these levels here, it will start slowing down. But I think you get into that stall box just in the same way as this bottoming box. You made it into the bottoming box midway. But this is a break. We did call it there and we were wrong. It went lower. And we tried again there, I think. I can't even remember. But we tried twice before, and both times we were early, which is wrong. That smells like a turn for me. So I do think, you look at Ethereum, for example, it's the one that, by the way, that we most need for the BTC dominance to turn, to start waking up. And as we've already showed you, actually, its pullbacks are quite benign now. It's really... whatever was holding it back. Someone had record shorts on it, someone was telling me. I don't know if that's your Solana boys. But it's now, it's now a lot firmer. So that would be one, you kind of got a bit of a 2 there. And you had a, let's have a look at this. You had a bit of a rising wedge and knockback there. And you've come down to the funnel and supported. I think it's looking pretty decent. But if Bitcoin goes one more time, it might come down and double bottom on the funnel one more time. But I think this is the line that gets broken. So it's looking pretty good. A little bit of softening there, but it's not falling away too fast at a time when actually the total market cap is coming down. So Ethereum is bullish. Bitcoin is potentially got a little bit more downside to it, but doesn't look too awful. That pattern could invalidate. XRP is struggling back a little bit. XRP, let's just do XRP BTC. I think it's given up ground here after gaining a lot of ground. I think it's recently with a sell-off lost a bit of ground. Very similar chart. Interestingly though, it may do that. Let's see. It's a bit grindy here. Yeah, could. But it could also start a down leg. I'm not overly sure. We'll have to see. It's in a bit of a flag that, so it could easily drop again, XRP. And that as a left shoulder spiky head, this has turned into quite a bulky right shoulder. So it really needs to get back going up to that neckline. I'll do it in double because it's the wrong color. Let's get the right color. So I'm not even too sure if that can still hold. It needs to get up to that neckline again. So it would make it's not as deep a right shoulder, but it's a lot bigger one by time, which sometimes happens when you have a very spiky structure. So a little bit of watching. I can't be too conclusive there. Could be in a point of recovery, but it could also. So XRP, it's not feeling like the obvious next one, the The one I'm not naming to you, cause why? Cause community first, by the way. They trusted me, they shared their equity, and I want them to have their time to pick it. Once we've all in that wants to be in, we'll probably talk about it. If it continues to do what we expect it's doing, if it peters out, we won't. But that is going to do going on 3x and is a liquid big market cap token that I've almost never spoken about before. So, for those of you that think it's Tron or any of the usual, we can do Tron for you. Tron, again, in a bit of a broadening structure. What I do like about Tron, and as I say, it's not that token, what I do tend to like about it is that it's less, it strikes me as less volatile. It didn't go up as much. Okay, it had a bit of a run and ran a target here. Amazingly, the minute it's run a target, and only just, you go into, it times. It's absolutely, I don't understand, it's magical, the geometry. That target was run and then the pullback period started. It literally is. How does it know that? How do all the geometries across multiple tokens synchronize for that? I don't know. It's magical. But I wouldn't be going heavy long at that point. I'd be thinking more defensively. And it's just lucky because it just puts you on the right bias at the right moment. And without having that line was done long time ago. I didn't just put it there. And where did it come from? It came from two inverted rounded bottom jaws. So that's a pullback for that. But then we see 36 and we see more and great gains. And I've told you about how this thing has overperformed through its bear market and why I think it will be an overperformer on the big time frame and will have a ridiculous melt up. So yes, we're bullish that one. And we've told you about that one. But the one short term, short medium term that has a bigger multiple than all of these is unnamed as yet. Book a call, find out, and more importantly, learn and understand the technicals as to why and how we intend to maximize it. We've already begun a little bit accumulating, but there's time and we want to get more and decent size on it if it's to be right. So possibly a dip down one more time on Tron. It depends again on Bitcoin. It's still a little bit tied to Bitcoin, but it's kind of counterintuitive. I find it very easy to use collateral in Tron and then to trade XRP because one's normally stable when the other one's going up. The problem if you have your best token as collateral and you trade it leveraged is you get a lot of free margin because both your collateral's going up and then it pulls back 50% and you've added too big. You see, something that is slightly counter-cyclical as your collateral is almost better for you, especially in a high volatility environment. So if you always take your best token and you're right and you trade leverage on top of that as collateral, you're going to get properly iced when it pulls back. So in order, apart from our mystery token, which you can all guess in the comments, or better still, book a call, find out, that should have short, medium term, a 3x in it. We're bullish Ethereum. We're bullish Ethereum, although I think first it can come down a little bit, but I think it's about to break out of that at some point. That capping descending grind line, so it can come back and then break it later. It doesn't mean the next minute it has to go up. So I'd be looking for fractals to the break. We're bullish Ethereum. We are expecting HBAR to bottom around a little bit in USDT terms before shouldering and then giving you quite a good target through 91 cents on that little orange that looks like Bart Simpson's hand at the moment. So there we go, let's do that. So a little bit more of a bowling here, a little bit of handle, and then a break at the 28.75. So you can wait for it and put your alerts on there, or you can try pick. That's what I'm going to be doing. What you're doing is your own business, as I say. When I say you, I'm talking about me. You should do your own things and come to your own decisions. What else? Yeah, that's it. I think that's it. Tron good. BTC. Little bit soft, could go a little bit lower first. That would pump the dominance. The interesting thing is we've seen gold go down more and silver actually stubbornly hang on. And platinum also a bit, not as stubbornly, but also hang on. But gold going down quite a lot. So now we're seeing a period where we think they've overshorted the smaller metals and there's a real problem for them. And what that means is they're desperate for supply. In the same way, I kind of think Bitcoin could be the one that has to come off a little bit, and that you could even amazingly, in a rare moment, have alts showing some relative strength. So we continue to expect that Bitcoin dominance to go up on an inverted chart, which means Bitcoin dominance percentage is actually going down. You see these numbers getting lower here. And we're predicting between the 44 and 48 for a third high in there. So back into the mix there. That shows some big movers. And that particular token, the one that may not be named, is going to be one I think that will, which has already a reasonable market cap, that if it does, 3x possibly and more, will actually be part and parcel of taking back some of that Bitcoin dominance and contribution to the total market cap. So all good. XRP will come around, but doesn't look that ready. And I think that's all that we've covered. So thank you for watching. Don't forget, like and hit the bell for notifications after you've subscribed. Till next time, I'll catch you later. It was the Crypto Sniper with an update on why we've gone down. Remember the total says not too much big drama. We're expecting, even though we're at 3.7, to go 5.27 on market cap overall. And it's quite slow pullback. It's not a huge drama. So not bad, not that bad for pullbacks. Till next time, catch you later. Bye.
Tired of profit wipeouts and blown accounts from following trade signal groups and other YouTube channels? Looking for a better way to trade, reduce your stress, and minimize your risk? Become a skilled technical analyst and see the charts and markets in a new light using the successfully proven HBF method by Francis Hunt, while being surrounded and supported by a principled, structured, and experienced community. Enjoy a constructive learning environment while practically trading markets, supported by a bespoke platform run through browser and app, specifically designed to teach and engage you whilst learning and growing as the markets move. This is not a Telegram or Slack signal group. All trade ideas are based on a proprietary technical analysis process honed over decades, which is the HVF method, leading to trade ideas with fast-moving breakouts and tight stops, exact entries and exits, nuanced interim considerations, and ultimately, strong rewards. Submissions are graded and scored by Francis for potential high-quality setups, and we provide bespoke tools to help get the job done properly and with precision. Over time and with focused effort, you'll begin to look at charts and price action just like Francis. Community updates every day by Francis and our 3 webinars a week provide a 360-degree approach, which are presented by our experienced team of trade leaders to spot potential trades. We're a community of self-actualized individuals, spanning the globe and active 24/7, 365. The premium community provides a warm, supportive, and cooperative place for people willing to listen, participate, contribute, and to learn. We've changed thousands of traders' lives. Transform your approach to trading now. Transform your life. Book an introductory call with us on the link below.